Hola, yo soy José Ramírez Garza y te doy la bienvenida a este nuevo proyecto llamado Dance, que será un podcast y un canal de YouTube. La idea de este proyecto es poder platicar con bailarines, con maestros, con coreógrafos, en fin, con toda esa gente que colabora para que nuestro mundo de la danza sea lo que es hoy en día. En este episodio de estreno de nuestra primera temporada, me da muchísimo gusto haber platicado con Misty Copeland. Muchos conocemos a Misty y hablar de su carrera nos tomaría muchísimas horas, pero en esta ocasión quise platicar con ella, hablar de sus inicios, de cómo ha sido su carrera, su desarrollo y los planes que tiene para un futuro, sin dejar a un lado cómo ha pasado esta situación del COVID-19. Así es que espero que disfrutes de esta plática que tuve con Misty. Bueno, pues ya estamos aquí y me da mucho orgullo y mucha emoción poder tener con nosotros y presentarles a Misty Copeland. Hello, Misty.
Hi,
How,
hola.
hola, ¿cómo estás? How are you?
Bien, bien. Good. It's extremely busy. I know that it's been a very difficult time for the dance community in
Right.
particular, and staying motivated and with with a job. And so I'm very fortunate that I have so many projects that I'm really passionate about that bring ballet into so many different worlds that I'm a part of. And so I've been really busy, but really good.
That is amazing because yeah, we know many companies and dancers are struggling in these times and with these unusual times we're all living. But it is good to hear that you've been busy, and I know
Yeah.
you're always involved in so many very important issues and initiatives, and that's why I would like to talk a little bit about that with you,
Yeah,
and I appreciate your time. I appreciate
of
your willingness to
course.
be part of this project. So
Thank you.
if we start, I know everybody knows you, but this is gonna be also something. I don't know, just an informal chat with you, and I would like to know from you, from your voice, how was your beginning in this ballet world?
Yeah. Well, I never assume that everyone knows me. And I think that it's part of, it's part, I think, of my responsibility of being, a leader in the ballet community to be willing to put in the time and share my story and other people's stories as many times as possible so that they know and they will fall in love with ballet like we all have. Well, I started in ballet at 13 years old. And knew nothing about it before that. I had never even heard classical music until I took my first ballet class. I grew up in Southern California in the Los Angeles area.
Okay.
I'm one of six children, big family, but pretty much, my mother pretty much raised all of us on her own. There was a lot of moving around. There was just not a lot of stability in my household, and there were no arts in my life. I naturally was drawn to music. There was always music
Okay.
being played in my house. My mother is Black, Italian, and German. She
Wow.
was a professional cheerleader for the Kansas City Chiefs football team when she was very young. So she had a desire in her for movement and for dance, but it was never it never went beyond being a professional cheerleader. But that was something that I think was ingrained in me in a way I didn't know from her. But when I heard music, I started to create and choreograph from a young age. And looking back, like I really think it was an escape for me. And I think that that's how a lot of people use art, whether they're escaping because they need beauty in their life, or they're escaping from, a busy, crazy schedule or trauma that they've experienced. And so it was like a saving grace for me. And then when I was discovered, I took my first ballet class at a community center where my mother would have all of us kids go after school while she was working several jobs to take care of us.
Right.
And a ballet teacher was offering free ballet classes on the basketball court in the gym.
Wow.
and and that's where I took my first ballet class, and it was pretty terrifying. I'd never done anything outside of my comfort zone, and I was an extremely shy and introverted child. I mean, to the point where people, when I interact with people I went to middle school with and high school with, a lot of people thought I couldn't speak.
Wow.
And it was that serious, where I think because of all of the trauma and things that were going on at home, I thought if I don't open my mouth, people won't know about it. People won't know about me. And dance and ballet in particular was the first time I felt like I could express everything I'd experienced and was going through, and I didn't have to speak. And there was something so safe about that.
Right.
But it took off very quickly. I ended up living with my ballet teacher who taught me on the basketball court. I lived with her and her family for 3 years because she saw a lot of potential in me and thought I could become a professional, but I didn't have a lot of time. 13 is older to start. And most people go to audition for professional companies by the time they're 17 or 18.
Right.
So I ended up only training for 4 years before American Ballet Theatre took me into the company and moved to New York City. Yeah.
That is amazing. That is a quick career, quick rise. And then you came to New York because I read your book, and I've read a lot about you, of course, and I have your book here. Which
you have the original. That's the original memoir. We've had a couple of republished
reprints.
ones. You have my documentary.
And the movie, of course.
Yes.
And I know a lot what is in the book. And where did ABT saw you first? Was this at a contest or at school?
Yes. So I trained in a very small ballet school in the small town I grew up in called San Pedro, California. Beautiful little town right on the water. Ballet was not a big part of the community. But I at the time, my teacher had entered me in the biggest arts competition in Southern California. They give money and scholarships to high school students. So I was 15 years old, and I had just attended my very first summer program. After only a year and a half of dancing, I went away to San Francisco Ballet. They took me on full scholarship, and they put me in the highest level, even though I still didn't even know all of the vocabulary, all of the steps in the ballet vocabulary and terms. It was pretty scary, but at the same time, I was so eager to learn. But at 15 years old, I had just come home from San Francisco, and I auditioned for this competition called the Spotlight Award. And one of the judges was in charge of the summer intensive program. Rebecca Wright was her name, at American Ballet Theatre. And she was a former soloist in the company, as well as Gerald Arpino, who was the artistic director of the Joffrey Ballet.
Right.
And they chose me as the winner. And I had very little training under my belt, but it was kind of this like battle over like who was going to get me, Joffrey or ABT. And I have all of these wonderful photos of me and Mr. Arpino, and I was so young and so little, and he just had me in his arms. And there was a lot of love from them, but ABT became my goal. From the time I started dancing, my teacher was showing me videos of them, that company, because they're more diverse in terms of the training than any other company. Most companies, take from their school, and ABT never had a consistent school, and also welcomed dancers with different types of training from all over the world. So she felt, for me as a young Black dancer, as a Black woman, a Black girl, ABT would most likely take me into their company over any other company. So that became my goal. And that ABT offered me the next summer a full scholarship to train with them. At the end of the summer, they offered me a position with the studio company, which I was still very young, and I remember calling my mom and asking her if I could stay and be in the studio company, and she said, no, you have to come home and finish high school. And I remember having to go to Kevin McKenzie, the artistic director, and say, my mom said no. And he promised me that the following year I would have a spot saved for me in the studio company.
Okay.
So
So you went back.
I went back home.
Okay.
I went back
Wow.
home, and then I moved to New York City the following summer. Literally, as soon as I graduated high school, I was on a plane. I couldn't wait. And then following this, I did the summer intensive again, knowing I was going to join the studio company. But at the end of the performances of the summer, Kevin offered me an apprenticeship with the company before I even joined studio company. So I ended up traveling through Asia with the main company when I think I had just turned 18. It was my first time out of the country. It was quite an experience. And then after that experience, I went back to studio company and spent a year there.
Wow. And you were so young. I mean, moving across the country literally
Yeah.
so young and getting these opportunities at such a young age. What was going on through your mind at that time?
Um, it was scary, but it was the first time in my life that I was doing something that I wanted to do. And the first time in my life that, I wasn't having to share something with my 5 siblings. It was the first time I was doing something that I loved and I was passionate about. So the excitement definitely was bigger than the fears that I had.
Okay.
It was my dream to be in New York City and to be in American Ballet Theatre, to stand next to Paloma Herrera. She was my idol, and to think that I ended up sharing the stage with her for like 15 years is mind blowing. And that, we would share the same bar every morning and I would stand behind her. I just never imagined that my life would be all of these things that, are every young dancer's dream. And I was so grateful for it all.
I bet, yeah, because at such a young age, mind blowing is the word. I mean, you just said it. It's such a diverse. I can imagine such a diverse of emotions and
Yeah.
like a storm of feelings and roller coaster of emotions going through. But and I mean, you were meant to be there, and you were
Mhm.
meant to dance, of course. How were those first years? Those first years with ABT for you?
It was a roller coaster.
Yeah.
When I was in the studio company, I still was somewhat protected. When I growing up, in my small ballet studio, my teacher really, I mean, I was living with her. Because she needed to catch me up on the training.
Right.
But she really protected me in a way that allowed me to simply just focus on my training. There was not a lot of discussion about being Black, even though I learned later that it was really an issue. There were students that their parents pulled them out of her school. They left the board of directors because I was this young Black girl with no experience, and she was giving me the leading roles. And there was a lot of things that she really kept from me because she wanted me to simply be able to just focus on dance. And I feel that there was still some of that in the studio company. I remember John Meehan, who was the studio company director at the time. And he was a principal dancer with the Australian Ballet, with American Ballet Theatre. And he was like a father figure, and he was another protector, and he allowed me just to flourish, and he nurtured me. And then as soon as I was out of his reach, I was unleashed into the company, and it's just like, you're on your own. There's no protection at all. And it was really the first time that there were issues brought to my face about the color of my skin,
Wow.
about and a lot of that language was hidden behind my body. So I went from being told you're a prodigy, you have the exact right proportions, the right muscle tone, the flexibility, the size of your head, all of these things. And then within 4 or 5 years, I'm being told you don't have the right body. And it was like, trying to understand where that was coming from. And so many Black and brown dancers who are told that. And a lot of the time, it's not that they don't have the right bodies, it's that they don't have the right skin color. And that weighed on me so much. And I lost focus in those first years. Like I remember I first got into the company and immediately was given a principal role in a big contemporary ballet. It was Mark Morris. He created a work on the company. And I remember I was just given a core contract and I was doing the role that Ashley Tuttle, who was a principal at the time, was doing, Erica Cornejo was doing. And it was kind of like right after that time that things started getting weird. And I remember board members and different staff mentioning things to me about the fact that I was the only Black woman in the company. And that was kind of when my eyes were just open. But I felt very isolated and very alone. I was the only Black woman in the company for the first decade of my career. And it was really difficult. I would say I struggled like the first 3 years of my career. It started to affect how I focused on my work. It started to affect how I took care of my body because I stopped feeling belief in myself because I didn't think other people believed in me.
Right. Well, that must have been hard. And 10 years, you were the only Black girl in the company. Wow, that is a lot. That is a lot.
Yeah.
But you overcame all that. You gracefully became this figure that we, including me, of course, we all admire. And your voice is so strong, and I get goosebumps because I remember being there at the Met and watching you and Firebird.
Mhm.
I remember, and that was such an amazing experience. Uh, Seeing you there representing so many people that also were in the audience, and
Mhm.
it was a very emotional performance. It was a very emotional clap at the end, and it was great. How did
Thank you.
you cope with all that pressure and all? Because I
Mm.
I, I imagine it must have been a lot of pressure because by then you knew you were a voice that was gonna change things, or maybe not aware completely, but you had a
Mhm.
voice. How was that
Yeah.
for you?
I don't think I knew you were there. That's
Yes.
really cool that you were there. Um, I've had just such an unusual path that I've tried not to like get caught up in the outside perspective or noise. I've always just tried to stay really focused on everything I'm doing in the moment. Um, and at the same time, the stage and performing has always been like the most safe place I've experienced in my life. Again, growing up in the atmospheres I did, there was a lot of abuse. There was a lot of moving around and changing schools. And the stage was the first time that I felt like, oh my gosh, no one can touch me and no one can say anything to me. And I can just express myself in the exact way that I want to and that I know how to. So the stage has never been a place like, though there may be outside pressures, like once I get there, it's all gone. But that season in particular, um, it was hard because I was dealing with an injury
Right.
to my left tibia, to my shin, which by the time I did that performance was my first performance of Firebird in New York City at the Metropolitan Opera House. I had already performed the role, I think 3 times in California when it made its premiere. But I had been dancing on the injury for maybe 4 or 5 months at
Okay.
that point when I did my performance of Firebird. So I was 29 years old, and it was the first time I was being given a principal role in a full-length classical ballet. And as you know, and as people watching and listening in the ballet world know, that is very late to get your first leading role in a ballet. So in my mind, I wasn't feeling pressure. I was feeling so motivated. Like, this is my one opportunity to prove one last time that even at 29 years old, I still have the passion and the dedication and what it takes, I think, to be a principal dancer and to lead a company. And I felt like that was literally my last opportunity. So I put my all into it. And my manager and I really made sure that the Black community, the Black and Brown community, knew that I was going to be performing, because it was about what I represented. It was about all of the dancers who have come before me who didn't get the opportunity that I have or that I did. And to be able to invite that community into that space. And a lot of them had never even been in the Metropolitan Opera House. And it's a scary place to enter when you know that you're being excluded or you're not being represented. So my mere presence on the stage made that community feel like they want to support the arts, they want to support ballet. And it was a magical evening, even though I was in excruciating pain when it ended. And I ended up pulling out of the season from there and having surgery.
I remember, well, of course, I remember the emotion at that performance. And at that moment, I wasn't aware of the injury, of course, until many years later when I found out. And I think it was when I read a book or saw an interview or something. But how was that? I mean, you've been working so hard. You were given this amazing opportunity at the Met. You were there with a lot of people who admired you, representing a lot of people as well. How was that moment when you knew you had to stop and pull out of the season emotionally for you?
It took a little while to hit me. I think that my injury wasn't something I shared with a lot of people because I think a lot of companies work this way, but the way that ABT works, if they would have known that I was feeling pain, they would have pulled me from rehearsals. And if I missed rehearsals, then I wouldn't have performed. Right. And so I knew that this, with Alexi Ratmansky coming in and choosing me and casting me in that role, I knew that opportunity wouldn't come again. It hadn't been done from internally. A lot of the opportunities that I've gotten throughout my career were from people from the outside that came in and just saw my potential. It didn't matter what my position was, my rank, didn't matter the color of my skin. They saw talent and potential. Right. And so I knew that this was my last chance. And so it really played into, I guess, how I was approaching that performance. But I knew in the back of my mind that it was going to be the last performance I was going to do for a while. So I think I psychologically and emotionally was kind of prepared. I mean, it hurt just to stand. And somehow, I was in class, not jumping. I was just trying to save my leg as much as I could for the show. I mean, I was getting treatment outside of ABT. But I went to the doctor, I think a couple of days later, and found out I had 6 stress fractures in my tibia. And 3 of the fractures were almost full breaks through the bone. And so, he was just like, oh my gosh, if you one more jump, who knows, you could have broken your shin bone. But I knew that performance meant so much more. That night just meant so much. Yes. Whether or not I even went on to do one more performance, there were so many people that were impacted in that theater that could change the course of their lives, their future, the future of dance. And that's what I was thinking of. But I think maybe after the surgery, when it took me, I think I wasn't walking for a couple of months. And that's when, just stepping back and my image was still hanging in front of the Met as the Firebird. And I had to see that until the season ended, knowing I couldn't be on the stage was pretty heartbreaking. But I was looking at the bigger picture. I was looking at the long-term goal, which I felt I proved that I could do it. And so when I came back, I felt more confident that I would get an opportunity again.
Yes, and it was amazing. So after the surgery and your recovery, which is, of course, very, I don't want to say the word common, but many dancers struggle.
Yes, it is common. It is common. Yes.
It's part of the world of the dance.
It's part of it. Yes.
So, and it's great that we can let people know how you overcame that and to see how you surpassed all the difficulties and where you are now, it's a great example for all the kids
Mhm.
and young people that are starting to look for a job in companies, or
Yeah.
I mean, they need to take care of themselves, you know, because
Mhm.
it's important in your career. So principal dancer, I know it was also a milestone, and it was a very decisive moment for many people. How was Misty about that?
Um, I had a lot of, well, I think it took me a couple of years before it even really sunk in. um, it was like the season with Firebird, it was another difficult season. I think so. When I did Firebird, I was 29, and when I was promoted, I was 32. And again, this is very late to be promoted to principal dancer. Um, I was that same year, I was given like every principal role at the same time, and it's really difficult for someone who at 32, we're already so developed and not as easy to mold when
Mhm.
you reach that age.
Right.
And so to be taking on all of these leading roles for the first time at that age, it's a lot to ask, I think, of a dancer. Where I've been doing Swan Lake since I was 17 years old. And so to all of a sudden step into this role and have to have a completely different mind, and even psychologically, there's so much when you reach that age of like, I guess I'm never going to do that role. Or you start to tell yourself
Right.
all of these things. And then all of a sudden everything's shattered and they're like, oh, here you go. 32 years old. Let's see what you can do. I mean, I was doing Swan Lake, I was doing Gamzati, I was doing Juliet. I was doing literally like every principal
Everything.
role in the repertoire all of a sudden out of nowhere. And at the same time, there's a lot of outside chatter, like every article that was written about that season of the Met, I was mentioned in it. And it was, is if Misty fails in this step, will she be promoted? That literally was the talk
Wow.
about every single performance I did. So that's like a lot of added pressure when I'm already taking on all of these roles for the first time. And every time I step onto the stage, I'm in the back of my mind, I'm like, is that all everyone's thinking, or are they enjoying and watching the
Right.
performance that I'm putting on? So that was just, I think, the first time in my career that I felt anxious on stage. And that was really difficult because that was always such a sacred place for me. And then I felt like I was allowing all of this outside noise to affect me. And it took talking to a lot of incredible mentors in my life to just like focus me and bring me back to the present. And in my mind, I knew that it wasn't about the promotion, but it's still, there's so much as dancers and as performers, as athletes, that you have to be so strong mentally. But at the same time, you have to have a support system. So it's not just about being tough. Like you should process things and you should acknowledge certain things, but understand the reality and the realistic part of what people say and everything. So by the time I was promoted, I was so exhausted, it didn't really hit me. I was just like, I think I literally, my phone, I ended up having to do a last minute like press conference because the news, like everyone showed up at the theater and they were calling. And meanwhile, I'm like, I can't even talk to my mom because I'm like, I have rehearsal. I was like, there's a show tonight. This still has to happen. Um, so I think in the end, it really was like what it meant for the Black community and what it means for the dance world going forward. I think that was why my promotion was so important, not necessarily for me personally, because I already felt fulfilled by the roles I was given. And
Right.
that's what it's all about.
Yeah. And how important it is to, because the press and now with social media, things can get to your head. Things can get to
Yes.
your head, and all the younger people. Yes, it's amazing to have those tools and have the social
Mhm.
media and the reach you can get and exposure, but there needs to be a limit. You
Yes.
can't get to your
And
head.
yeah. And I think reminding yourself of like what it is you're doing and why. Like for me, I feel like the work we put into what we do as dancers is so valuable because, dancers don't enter this world to become famous on a worldwide scale or to become rich.
Right.
That's not why we do this. We do it
Right.
because we love it. And I think that, with this new age in social media, and I'm all for social media, and it's done so much for the dance world, especially Instagram being such a visual form,
Uh-huh.
a visual platform. I think it's so great for dance, but I think this generation, we have to just remember like what the art form is and why we do what we do. It's not to get, followers. It's not to get likes, but it's to share our art with people, but also not to get caught up in the things that you read in comments and people's opinions. It's the first thing I think is, do you know them? So why, and if you don't, why does their opinion matter so much?
Right.
Why does it matter so much? And so I think that it's, again, having people around you to remind you of who you are and your worth and what your goals are, and not to get caught up in other people's opinions. That shouldn't matter.
Do you read those comments on Instagram, for example, or do you read?
It depends. I think it depends on, first of all, like what I'm posting and what the like context is. But I feel like I'm 38 years old and I've had a 20-year career at this point and a lot of experience of being in the public. So I feel like I can kind of sift through things and see what's valuable. Like, even if I don't even know if they're real people, if it's like a bot, what it is, but if it's a comment that provokes a conversation that I want to have, then I will respond.
Okay.
But it's not necessarily to that person, but it's to open a conversation. And even if I don't continue to engage, it allows for people to have a conversation within my platform. And I think that's like a powerful tool, powerful way of using social media. I think also a lot of the time, like with Black people in dance and in ballet, we haven't always been believed of our experiences, because if you're not there seeing it or experiencing yourself, it just kind of seems like, is it really that bad? And I think with social media, and this isn't just in ballet, it's in the world, you really get to see what other people experience, whether it's love or hate. And it's been a real opportunity, I think, for people to see the negativity and the racism that exists in the ballet world.
Yes, it is a great tool. It is a great platform, but I agree, it needs to be taken, it needs to be done in a constructive way,
Yes.
and not believe in the rest and don't
Right.
engage in the rest. And
Yes.
that is amazing to hear from someone like you. So I know there's been a lot of different things you've done. I mean, the book came, the movie came. I remember a couple of years ago, maybe the Nutcracker came,
Yes.
and the tour with Prince. And I mean, it's been a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, a 20-year career, but it's been a lot of things that
Yeah.
you've been doing. How is that? I mean, no, not everybody gets to do all that.
Yeah. I, you know, I I've always, when I started working with Prince, I didn't have a manager. I mean, the times have changed, but when I was first coming up as a professional dancer, I remembered like maybe principal dancers having managers just so they could negotiate their contracts, or you can book gigs when you're off season with your company. But otherwise, there was no real need for us to have a manager. So when I was approached by who my manager is now, she found out who I was from a Prince concert that I was performing at. And the reason that I decided to do it, I mean, of course it's Prince, but I've been approached by a lot of, like musicians and big stars, but if I don't feel their message aligns with mine, or it doesn't make sense for me to do, like I've never done anything just to have my face out there, just to be seen, where maybe it just doesn't align with my ideals and values. shows. With Prince, we talked for a while, and, he's just such an incredible artist, and he had so much respect for what I do. And he wasn't hiring me to be his backup dancer. He wanted me to be an artist featured in his performances. And I saw it as a way to bring ballet to so many people. I mean, I was performing at Madison Square Garden. I was performing in Los Angeles at these big, convention centers. But it's been a process of choosing the right partnerships or the right things. I'm not just saying yes to everything. And it's not just about how much money is offered to me, that I feel like it's a real opportunity for me to bring ballet with me in everything that I do, and to give other dancers opportunities. Like I talk about the fact that we should be equal to athletes in, the health insurance we get, and the physical therapy, and the way that we're paid, the endorsement deals. I think all of it, why shouldn't we have the same respect given to us? So, in a lot of the things I do, I just try and think of ways to bring my colleagues with me, or think of other dancers, and just show the world that we're interesting too, not just athletes, not just soccer players and football and basketball, that we work harder than all of them.
Yep.
And that, and that we're relatable. I think a lot of the time ballet is depicted in film and in television and in media like we're this kind of elite, faraway thing, that we're just this frivolous art form that is not relatable to like every human being. And that's not really the case. And I think that when you give people an opportunity, like the way I've been showcased in so many commercials and different things, they see that like I'm a human being, and that's what I want people to see dancers as. And I think that's something the ballet world has shied away from, is that they want to keep the curtain closed so you don't see behind the scenes, and it's this magical thing. But I think we're at a point now where we need to have people invest in us in order to keep this alive. And if people think that we're these superficial, anorexic things twirling on the stage in tulle, they're not going to feel a connection to us. So, I'm fortunate for all of the amazing opportunities that I have, but I'm always in the back of my mind thinking about how it can further the ballet world.
Yes, I've heard that before from you, and it is amazing how words, in your case, are turned into actions.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you can hear many people saying that things that need to be done and like that, but then they don't follow through. They don't make the work, and you do it, and that is amazing for many of us that are in the dance world involved in a way. It's amazing to see someone really stick to the plan.
Thank you.
How have these last months been for you? I mean, you said you were busy, you've been busy, but
Yeah.
how was this lockdown for you? Because
Yeah.
it's weird.
It is. And it's also a weird time because I got injured right before we went into lockdown.
Okay.
I had a fracture like in my back. So I went into the quarantine not being able to move. I had a small procedure on my back. So I was literally laying in bed for like the first month and a half that we were in lockdown.
Okay.
So it kind of worked out well for me because I couldn't do anything anyways. But it's been such an adjustment for me personally, because this is the longest I think even with all the injuries I've had, this is the longest I've been away from dance, like in a real way, in a consistent way. And, it's a different time in my life. I'm doing so many other things. I mean, they're all connected to ballet in some way, but this is the first time where my focus isn't on me. As dancers, it has to be on your body, whether it's your training or your recovery. It's all this internal focus. And this is the first time where I have a production company, so I'm working on a lot of different film and TV projects behind the scenes. So a lot of my days are spent like on Zoom meetings or book interviews and writing. but I think this past week was the first time since we've been in quarantine that I was in the studio every day giving myself a ballet class. So it's just been such an interesting transition for me, but I think a healthy one. Again, to have the first time for me to kind of just step away and again, think about other things other than yourself. And I feel like probably a lot of dancers when they retire have that kind of feeling of like, oh my gosh, like
Yeah.
your world has been so internal for so long, and I think that that's a lot of the reason why I was thinking of the Swans for Relief campaign, and making money for different companies around the globe and bringing in different ballerinas from other companies from different countries, because I wanted to like show the world that we can unite in this time. And the US is definitely not in that place right now. And to show that we are capable of doing this. And I think artists have always led the way in times of despair, that people turn to music and to dance and to art to heal and to be motivated. And so that was such a beautiful thing for me, like inside, to bring together all of those ballerinas and make money for the ballet world.
Yeah. It is a beautiful movement and a beautiful opportunity to help others, and that speaks of your kind heart, of course, wanting
Thank
to
you.
through this and through what you can do, help others, and that is
Thank you.
amazing. So
Thank
thank
you.
you. No, thank you. And so what comes next when this thing ends, hopefully soon?
Yeah, I know.
uh, what are your plans? Is going back full time?
Hmm.
Then you have so many
I don't
activities
know.
now. Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? I really don't know. No. It's again, it's I I I would love to, when I do step away from the stage, I want to have a full, love fest with every country and every community that's given so much to me. But right now I feel really invested in the ballet community, whether it's joining different boards, like arts institutions, like joining the board of directors for different places. And that's huge right now. I can't think of any big organization that's allowed dancers to be on their board. And I
Yeah.
think that's a big step that's happened because of COVID and because of Black Lives Matter, where people are really looking at where the art world fits in at this point in time, and how relevant we are, with such real issues happening in the world. And we are such a big part of how we take the next steps. Artists always have been. And I think that the ballet world, it's time for us to reassess what we're doing, because I feel like we've just kind of been at a standstill for so long. And I think that this is a real opportunity for us to be innovative and to think about new ways to present our art, and to redefine what theater is. Because I think I love the history and tradition, and there's so much attached to these institutions like the Metropolitan Opera House, but there's also so much negativity from certain communities that they don't belong. So like, let's redefine what those spaces are. And so I feel like right at this moment that a lot of my focus is kind of on the internal like structure of where the ballet world is going.
Wow. And I am sure you're going to make a huge impact as well. You know that I am a huge fan. And when we had you here in Monterrey, it was such a delightful evening.
Thank
It was such a
you.
beautiful time. And you have a lot of fans, of course, here as well. So I know the people in my Spanish speaking community are going to really enjoy listening to this and watching you. And
Thank
because we
you.
really admire you. I think, and maybe this is just personal, but as Latin people, as Latin American people, we also sometimes feel some kind of a rejection.
Oh, absolutely.
Racism is it's also affecting many people, many of us.
Absolutely.
So to have someone like you standing up, it
Mm.
feels it feels personal. You're standing up for us, for me, for my community, for my people, for family, friends, and colleagues. So that is something
Thank
that
you.
I really want to take the time and thank you for your
Thank you
effort
so
in
much.
doing that.
Thank you.
You represent many of us, many, many, many of us, and
Thank you.
that is amazing. Misty, I really want to thank you. I know I've said it through our conversation, but I know you're a busy person, and I know you have many things to do, and I really appreciate you taking the time and giving
Of
us
course.
this moment. Um, it is amazing to know you, and I want to thank you for being so
Oh,
kind
thank
and
you.
really, again, doing the job. Thank you
Oh,
for.
I can't wait to come back.
Oh, we can't wait to have you back. So it's
You.
been an amazing experience having you here, and it's been an amazing experience talking to you today.
I'm grateful for your community and for having such incredible support. And, I think that to be able to be in a place that is not your home and to feel accepted, I think is huge, especially as, as an artist who often felt so, rejected in this community of the ballet world. I just find Mexico a very special place, and I can't wait to come back.
We love you. We really love you here and
Thank you.
admire you, and we hope to have you back soon.
Yes. Thank
Thank you. Thank you very
you.
much, Misty. Have a good night, and
You too.
I hope to see you soon.
Yes.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.